Welcome, James, and welcome everybody to the Office of Tree Spirits, where we do the first Adventures in Gonzo Vision podcast. And what is Adventures in Gonzo Vision? Gonzo Vision comes from Gonzo journalism. It's Hunter S. Thompson's style of writing, capturing in the moment. And James, that's exactly what you did on your journey down to Cambridge, Wiltshire, and Cornwall for 6 weeks. You captured videos in the moment. You made 10 videos on YouTube that just engaged me. Just tell me, what was the inspiration to do something like that and to travel and live in a van as you did?
So my dream has always been to convert my van and to buy a van and convert it into to go free and to find where the road wants to call me. So straight away, when it was done, I knew that I had to plan a trip around Cornwall, around the place that has always been my favourite part of the country. But first I had to stop in Cambridge to do a talk, and this was like a wellness festival. This was a place called the Whole UK. A woman called Maria Lena was running this place, and we all kind of got together doing different activities. There was people coming and to kind of experience what a wellness festival is like, but not in the terms of a mainstream wellness festival. It was a different spin on things. So we had like the talk that I did, and then we had like the fire walking, we had the yoga, we even had drums, we had arrow breaking. So we had to like, I don't want an arrow where we were like literally trusting and breaking it with the softer part of our neck here. It was all very empowering type of festival.
Wow,
so,
sounds like fun. Just out of interest, what was the talk that you were doing at this festival?
So the talk that I was doing was mainly to do with water, but it was to do with how everything connects. It was about how we're going into this time now, which is to do with the water. You know, the Kogi people, who we're going to probably talk about after, the Kogi people of Colombia, which is an ancient tribe who are based in the mountains there. And they always say that the only way to truly awaken the world is by putting awareness on water. So that is why I base my talk on water, because if it's to do with the awakening, it's to do with finding your true self, living your passions and dreams, but also bringing it back to rebalancing Mother Earth. So we had to put awareness on where water comes from and how important water is when it comes to the collective consciousness.
Wow. So we're going to come back to that, and in terms of the importance of water and the research that you've done with water, because I've seen that on some of your videos on the Age of Albion. That's your YouTube channel, and I've watched many of them, and you've really highlighted the ancient springs around the country. And and also watching your videos on the Cornwall trip, you were exploring these ancient springs. But from that festival, you then went on to Wiltshire. And what was the inspiration to go on to Wiltshire? Did you plan that trip to Wiltshire and Cornwall? I know you intended that you wanted to go to Cornwall, but was this the whole plan at the beginning, or did it just kind of manifest as you were going?
So the plan originally was to briefly see certain parts of Cornwall and to travel from the talk in Cambridgeshire and arrive in Falmouth to see my favourite band, which is called Hollow Coves. And this band is like the message, if I'd recommend anyone to see them, because the message that they give in their music is the simple living. It touches my heart. It's the music that's always touched my heart. So to arrive there, because they were the band that first gave me the inspiration to do van life. And why it was so powerful to finally, the first trip in the van was to arrive to see Hollow Coves in my own country, because they'd never visited England before. They were an Australian band.
Right.
So that was my first stop. And then afterwards, I did have a rough plan in my head to see some of my favourite springs, which was like St Cuthbert's, you know, the Holy Well in the Cave, and then there was a few others that I had an idea of what I wanted to see. But because the van was a couple of weeks before, I wasn't even ready to come on the trip, because the van has a few issues kept popping up the week before, and I was planning to come on the train. I was planning to go to Cambridgeshire on the train. I was asking Maria Lena, the owner of the festival, what the train was like, how many trains you had to get to go there, and where the nearest station was. And this was all because I had to even plan. You know, it's not what if in life, it's even if. So even if something doesn't work out, you're still going to be there, you're still going to show up. And that's what it was teaching me, because even though I didn't need to get the train, the van ended up to be ready. But that was the lesson. It was, my mind was always prepared, even if, you know, and it was prepared for that. But anyway, the van did manage to sort itself out. It just managed to fix itself beyond my rational mind. And
Really?
that's why the journey was so incredible, because the van was incredible, the whole journey. So that's why I went to see as many springs as I could and base the trip around that.
It sounds like it was a magical journey, like every moment of it, and that there were these sort of it sounds like there was these synchronicities that kind of led you in in a kind of specific direction. Because what was the pull or the drive to go to Avebury? You know, I've been to Avebury, and it's quite a magnificent place, and probably one of my favorite earthworks in the
Yes.
country. But I haven't seen many earthworks. But tell me, what was the inspiration to go to that one?
So Avebury was always a stop off between Cornwall, so it was breaking the journey up. So I thought, before I went to Avebury, I was thinking, where can I go just to break this journey up? And I believed I'd be guided at that point, because I had no idea where to go around there, which was the best place to break the journey up. So I thought, universe, come on, let's give me an idea where to go. And straight away, I was thinking maybe Avebury, Stonehenge area, and the owner's husband or boyfriend, I'm not sure, but he mentioned, why didn't you go to Avebury? And or that it was around that area of Avebury, and I thought, right, so if he said it, I must be meant to go to Avebury. So as soon as I arrived in Avebury, it boggled my mind how big the stone circle was there, because I had no idea it was the biggest in the world, or apparently the biggest in the world, you know, known stone circle that's still there
Right.
now. And it was mind-blowing, the stone avenue running up to it with these huge megaliths, and in this stone circle it was split into two with the dual carriageways, or not the dual carriageways, the main road that go through Avebury. And so they're probably blocking certain energies now because they've cut through it with the road. But the feeling of Avebury was, yeah, very, very an ancient place, because you could see the water that would have gone around it in a moat-like structure going around the stone circle itself. So the water would have something to do there with like energizing the earth, you know, energizing the earth, because everything comes down to water.
Right. I mean, that's fantastic, and a lot to unpack there with Avebury itself and the stones and the water. But just at the very beginning of that, you were talking how it was like a suggestion by someone else, and then you had that feeling that, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to go and I'm going to do this. You know,
Yeah,
I love those kind of signs and symbols from you know, outside of
that's it.
ourselves sometimes. And I'm just going to plug Manic Organic, because that's actually what's brought this podcast together, is the organic farm that we both use, and that's how we met, was at Manic Organic.
Yes.
And it's those kind of little synchronicities that sort of put everything together, you know, and sort of generate this journey that we go on of being curious and investigative and want to explore for ourselves. So when you got to you know, Avebury itself, did you notice the trees?
The trees, I did. I noticed there was a really nice, I forgot what type of tree it was, if it was an ash or, but it was up some steps, and I noticed there was a few ancient trees, and there was an ancient ash in the middle of like the field, and then there's a couple others where people were leaving offerings there. So the trees they were very special. Yeah, I did notice.
Because there's like a chalk pathway that goes around one part of it, just with the I thought it was like a moat of some kind, but it's a channel for water, you know. And then there's this chalk pathway, and on the other side of that moat, or the other side of that sort of wall, you can see the roots of these trees that just go back to such an ancient time. I mean, are they like 600 to 800 years old, maybe even longer?
Possibly
I'm not
more,
sure,
possibly
you know.
more. Yeah, yeah. I think it's difficult to actually date a tree, because I feel like a lot of trees might be older than we think.
Yes, indeed. There's that idea that the rings of the tree, the thickness of the tree suggests, the thickness of the trunk itself suggests that's the age of it. And it's really just an idea that it must be around that time. You know, the trees in the background here, there's one of them that's about 80 years old, that we know from the thickness of it. It's where I put my hammock up, by the way, and that's where the actual third episode of Churches and Trees will start, from the Office of Tree Spirits. But when you got to Avebury, just back to that, How tall are the stones? Do you
So
know?
the biggest ones, they were massive. They were. I mean, if I'm guessing from my head now, if I'm 6 foot, they were at least double, maybe more than double me, and they were and 10 and even more than that, so maybe up to 15 foot, maybe. I'm not sure, but they were huge. They were. I didn't expect them, the actual stones, to be that big, that giant megaliths. There were some small ones, but most of them, especially on the Stone Avenue as well, they were absolutely massive, and they were wide. They were really wide as well. So I
Right.
think there was a one part section was a newer section I saw on the narrative. I'm not sure which part it was, but I know that the henge itself is original, but there may have been some stones or certain part of that henge added later.
And what was your overall feeling of what Avebury itself, the purpose of Avebury was back in the time? Obviously, we're not it's not been used in that same way, but for me, there was a feeling that it had a specific purpose that we're not aware of, and we're
Yeah,
not. It's not documented.
I think it looked like the ancients had understood the ley lines, and because the Avebury intersects with the Belinus ley line, the spine of Albion, and the St Michael ley line of England that goes across the south of England. So that Avebury area is an intersect of these two ley lines, and it looked like the ancients had realised that and started building these structures around this site, this special site of earth energy, and this is why that area was so powerful in terms of Albion.
Right. So that doesn't actually pick up on with my background, but
It doesn't know.
there's a book on it anyway. I'll put a link to the book where it actually highlights that image. I might send that or put a link to it where we can access that. But on the book itself of the spine of Albion, you can see that Avebury. There's also not just Avebury, but it's the chalk figure of the horse that's nearby there as well, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't get to see that actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's got some kind of, I feel, some kind of connection with the idea of Albion, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the the prophecy of Albion, which is a video that you've done with someone else,
Amani Studio Productions.
Amani Studio Productions, which is fantastic. A 4.5 hour, is it 4 hours long? But
Yeah,
it's
about
just
3 hours 50 minutes, I think. Yeah, nearly 4 hours.
I watched all of it, and I've also watched the second one that you've done with the added bits on the
Yeah.
zodiacs around the northwest. Fantastic. You've got a lot of information in there, a lot of research, that inspired me in so many different ways, similar to the research I'm doing with churches and trees and the idea of energy and ley lines, which you brought up just earlier before, that there's some kind that it sits on the St. Michael's
Yeah.
ley line.
St. Michael. Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes all the way across the United Kingdom, and it goes all the way through France, and I believe Italy and Greece, and then on
Yeah,
the
that
way to
was
Israel.
one of the St. Michael ley line. There's two. There's one that just goes through the south of England, and then there's another one which starts at St. Michael's Mount, or I think it might be Ireland, goes through St. Michael's Mount, and then onto Italy, and then onto like the Holy Land, I think it is afterwards.
Right, right.
So
Now I
there's
did
actually
not know
two.
that.
Yeah, there's two.
Now that's just blowing my mind, because that's just sort of started to make me think completely different from where I was on this one St. Michael's line.
Hmm.
I'll come back to it later. I could digress a little bit with it, but what I want to say is, so when you got to Avebury, you stayed there for how long?
I think it was 4 days. 3 days I stayed for in Avebury.
And you were next to Silbury Hill as well.
Yeah, Silbury Hill, a very important part of the land, I feel, because Silbury Hill is, well, it's right next to a spring, and in my opinion, there'll be multiple springs. And I noticed that there was a huge, like, kind of a small lake next to the hill itself, and I'm feeling like maybe it's a congregation of spring water from underneath the hill, similar
That's
to
right.
a place called Corwin in Wales, where they have a spring underneath the hill. And even though that's one, the Corwin one is actually a natural structure, Silbury Hill is meant to be man-made, or meant to be man-made. I will never say for certain, but it's meant to be man-made. And so I'm thinking, is this spring water from the hill? It'd be interesting to see if it was dry, if this water was still there. Because I know that there is a spring there. It was Swallowhead Springs was the name of the spring near the hill.
Right.
So maybe there's a certain, because I think it was Swallowhead Springs rather than Swallowhead Spring, if I'm right. There might be a few.
In your video, you actually go on a journey to try and find this specific spring, do you? And I can't remember. Did you actually find
I didn't find the Swallowhead Springs. I was aiming to try and come across it, but I think it was in the wooded area just near the hill. But it was
Right.
very, very boggy at that time because there was a lot of rainfall when I was there. There was floods, and
Really?
well, there was floods. I think it was a lot of rain, and the roads were kind of flooded. That's why I had to move the van on multiple occasions because I was being constantly splashed. And I found
Really?
that was when I was guided to find a spot, and I was literally that's when I came across Silbury Hill and the car park right next to it. So I stayed in that car park all the time. So I literally parked up right next to the hill, so I had a view of the hill in the morning.
And what was it like living in the van for the first time? You know, just were there moments where you weren't sure if the van was going to make it back home or make it to the next journey? Was that sort of in your mind at
Yeah,
the time?
that came out of my mind because I realised the van was driving absolutely perfect, and living in the van, you know, it's my dream, and it exceeded the expectations. I got used to it straight away. I mean, the size of the van is good, so straight away I had a nice double bed at the back, comfier than my own bed here in the room. And
Right.
all you had to get used to is like just having two stoves rather than like an air fryer and an oven. But you can easily cook with two stoves, and then
Yeah.
you've got to fill the water tank up and like not use the water too much. You've got to be careful with using the water. It only lasts 4 days if you use water carefully before you have to fill it up again. So
Right.
these things like this and keeping it clean, keeping it tidy, these are things that I have to get used to, and clean and washing clothes in the sink sometimes at campsites, little things like that. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that.
And did you find you would go and spend some time at campsites at all, or was it just on the road all the time? Did you book into a campsite or?
Yeah, only once a week. Because needed to fill the tank and get a shower. So because I don't have a shower in the van because I wanted it to keep the space for the sofa bed for guests. And
Right.
so I had to go into the campsites just to kind of refresh the van, fill up the tank, and yeah, about once a week. Yes.
Brilliant. And you did a great capture of all the videos on, like you sort of exposed what the van has actually looked like on the interior. I've been following you building that van, or putting the interior into that van, and getting all the help from others, and talking about it and watching it develop, and then suddenly seeing you on the road, it was like, wow. Oh, I was so envious for you. And so you went to this festival in Cambridge, and you went to Wiltshire, and as you're going along, did that excitement build? Because I can just imagine myself there. Did the excitement build, and just you felt like you were on some magical journey, really, didn't it?
It
Yeah.
did. It got more and more magical because, like you said before, when you're guided, I was guided by certain animals, and I won't actually say the animal because it's unique to me because
Right.
everyone has their own animal. So, but this animal kept appearing in certain statues, in real life, outside the van at night, making
Wow.
noises, like
Really?
everywhere I went for the next 3 weeks, even to the Springs, to Avebury, to the festival at Cambridgeshire, it was always there. It was always there, and that's why I knew I was on that right path because that animal was the same animal that I saw the day before I bought the van.
What? See, now I'm thinking, what could this animal possibly be? I'm going through squirrels and hedgehogs and
Yeah,
rabbits and
they're rarer than them. They're rarer than them.
right. An owl. Maybe it's an owl.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And then
I don't know. It
there was
could
another
be.
one as well. There was two animals that showed themselves, and this was when I ended up in a place called Boscastle on part 4 of the Cornwall series, and I met this lady called Lucy, Six of Earth, who's her Instagram. She's an amazing lady, which she's doing really nice work, really good, important work there on her Instagram as well. And she's like an energetic guardian of the spring in Boscastle. And I went inside the church there, and at the front there was hand created scarf type things, or like knitted. I don't know. I don't really know what they were, but they were on the church seats. And the two animals that were guiding me were there next to each other, handcrafted on these
Wow.
scarves right next to the spring.
I love
So
those. I
yeah,
love those journeys when those symbols are like confirming that you're on the right path, And to those who might not sort of have that same awareness, it's okay. It's just that for me, the Native Americans used to have these symbols where eagles would represent sight, or an owl would represent wisdom, a deer would represent gentleness, and it's like nature speaking back to you. So
it is.
I'm always with that kind of perspective, and that's obviously why we're having this conversation and why I'm following you, because I feel very connected in the same way. And so moving on to this this journey in Cornwall. So you left Avebury, and you just went. Did you have a specific plan for Cornwall? I believe you had a book that would that was giving information on the ancient springs and the wells that were in that location. What is the name of that book again?
So it's Holy Wells of Cornwall, and I forgot the author. I think I've got another one. I've got another one about Scotland just here, but I don't think it's here anymore. Anyway, there was I did do a video on it on my van conversion. I did talk about the book.
We can put the link below. I could put all the
link below. I'll put the link below, but it's Holy Wells of Cornwall. It's like, and it has pictures, it has a map, and it has a very rough map, by the way, because I had to try and find sometimes 3 days trying to find a spring and like nearly giving up every day, but then it's still persevering. Right. So I was following this book, and when I arrived in Cornwall, the first spring I saw was St. Kenwyn, and that was in Truro in Cornwall. That was central Cornwall, because that was the first stop I needed to go to get like a stock up with food. So there was like a shop there I had to stop at to then move on to Falmouth afterwards. So I kind of stocked up there and saw St. Kenwyn's spring whilst I was there, and that was barred off. So it wasn't barred off in the book. So since the book was written, it was now barred off, and you could still see it. It was very, very powerful energy. That's St. Kenwyn's Parish Church in Truro. That was incredible. Right. And after that was when I thought, right, so I've seen this one, I'm gonna make a series. At the start, I only thought it'd be like 1 video or 2 videos. I didn't realize that it was going to be 4 separate parts. I had no idea the power that I was about to kind of see with these springs, and I followed them along in the map, and I didn't obviously see them all. There's loads I haven't seen, but I had a rough route that I wanted to go around the coast, and I kind of used the springs as a guide to where to stay next. So I always stayed in a place where the spring was nearby, within like a couple of hours walking distance at most.
Right. I love the way you actually captured all of this, because I felt like I was there. There was this sort of real life experience. You know, you could hear the wind in the background. You could see that you've been, marching on for hours looking for somewhere, and I could feel the energy in yourself where you were very at a very high spirit of what was going on, and you were capturing that. And that was really everything about the gonzo vision, that sort of the gonzo journalism. Hunter S. Thompson would have been very proud of what you were pulling off there, going on that journey, living in the van, and then allowing us to come along and watch your adventure as you explored and seeked out, sought out these springs, and caves as well. You found caves on the beaches.
One of the springs was inside the cave.
And my favorite part of all were the seals, right? I mean, like when I saw that part of the seal looking up at you and almost like communicating to you, because you managed to capture it. There was also a rainbow in there, the beginning of the rainbow and the end of the rainbow. Just talk us through that. What was going on there?
So that was in St. Ives. So there was 3 beaches in St. Ives, main beaches. There was one closest to St. Ives Centre. The second one was Carbis Bay, or Cabris. I think it was Carbis Bay, it was pronounced. That was the second one. And that was the beach I spent 2 days trying to find this spring, because the book said it was at Carbis Bay. But it wasn't at Carbis Bay. It was at the next beach, Porth Kidney Sands. So that was where the spring was, if you're ever looking for a fairy well, which was what I was looking for 3 days. So on that 3rd day, I was on the moors themselves, and all of a sudden a rainbow just appeared in the bay. Both the front and, well, the left and the right bottom of the rainbow was literally right in front of me. So I was taken aback by this, because I'd never seen the rainbow so close in front of me inside the sea. And when that disappeared, or started to disappear, I think it was actually still there. And if I've just remembered now, actually the seal was at the bottom of the rainbow.
No way.
I've just remembered now. The seal was at the bottom of the rainbow, and then the rainbow started to disappear slowly, and then the seal looked at me for about 15 minutes, just literally popping his head up and looking at me. And I didn't expect to see my own sea lion show that day. Wow. I was looking for fairy well, and I came across the seals. So sometimes what you're looking for, you may not always find right away. Something else may come along that's even better, or that's part of the journey. Because I ended up finding Fairy Well that day anyway, in a very narrow, muddy path that you'd easily miss.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost as if like you not finding the well, because if you'd found the well before, you might not have
I'd
had
have
the
gone.
seal
I'd have
experience and the
gone.
rainbow, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always a reason for things, and to have that kind of insight and look into, you know, what's really happening in the moment is quite a unique thing that not everyone can do. And then it's as if nature comes alive and shows you something and kind of speaks to you, because St. Ives itself is quite a special place. What do you know about St. Ives, and you know, in terms of any research that you've come upon and heard about? What is your impression of St. Ives and the place that it is? And we'll expand a bit more on that meaning of the rainbow in a sec.
Yeah, so quite a few years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I listened to a podcast, and it was a podcast on the Albion light body. And I forgot the name of the podcast, but again, we'll link it below in the
It's
description.
Lisa Renee, because you sent that
Is
to
it
me.
Lisa? Oh, right, okay, so
It's
Lisa
Lisa
Renee.
Renee.
And it
Yeah.
was like the Albion light body or something. What was the title? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's something like the Albion light body. Let's just say
Yeah.
that, because I was listening to it a couple of days ago, just because there's so much information.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about the information from the Keylontic science and the catharic grids, which I'm researching. So when you sent that to me, I've listened to it like 3 times, because there's so much information, and it reveals a lot about St. Ives Bay, Avebury as well. You know, and these are the 2 places you went to.
Yeah.
And also the north of England, which we're going to come back to, because I'm going to ask you a lot more questions on what you've discovered in the north. But in terms of St. Ives Bay, what did you sort of uncover about it in terms of listening to that podcast and then finally getting there? What was your feeling there? I mean, the rainbows, you know. Well, I'll let you speak first, and then I'll elaborate on the rainbows in a sec.
Yeah, so with that podcast mentioned that there was 2 kind of focal points for the Albion light body, and for those that don't know what that is, there's always like an energy but beyond the physicality. So it's like us as humans, we also have a higher self and like an energy beyond our physical form that we're like tapping into all the time, and it's guiding us. It's called the higher self. And Albion, the land itself, would also have a higher self, or like an energy being that's just above it, you know, in a subtle form that you can't see with the naked eye, just like you can't see the internet traveling through the computer watching us now. So the focal point of what you call this Albion light body, the podcast was saying there was in St. Ives Bay. So I knew that before I came, and that's why it was so important, and why I saw that rainbow, because I've not researched it too much, but there's links to rainbows being on sacred sites and appearing on sacred sites, and this is why I was so interested to see the beginning and the end of the rainbow both on the bay. And then also the northwest of England on the Scottish kind of border, maybe the Lake District, maybe just before that area, is also another kind of focal point for this Albion light body. So with St. Ives Bay and then there's also a huge energy kind of I'm not sure exactly what the podcast said. I need to research again. I don't know if you remember, Liam, but why Avebury was what we mentioned was Avebury there.
I'll just elaborate a little bit. It's basically, you know, if you go into that sort of research, which I've been doing for the last 6 months, Ashayana Dean and Lisa Renee, and there's another person, they've done a lot of presentations on this idea of the grids on the planet and the galactic history that goes back millions of years. You know, it's quite out there. And you know, when you listen to it, for me, it's whatever resonates, you know, and some of these things were just coming up all the time. And Lisa Renee was that, when you sent that to me, it highlighted everything I've been learning about stargates.
Yeah.
And there's the energy lines themselves that suggest the energy lines are like parts of a grid of the planet, and there's 12 and 24 different points on the planet, which are stargates. I'm going to just say it, you know. This is what it is. And it's what's interesting is that there's a lot of like one of the stargates is in Iraq, you know, and it kind of makes a lot of sense if you go down this rabbit hole as to why there's certain conflicts in the world around these areas. But at the same time, it goes into a very, in terms of Britain itself, it goes to a very deep aspect of this ancient Albion, which is what I'm very interested in and what you've done your video on. And it sort of makes a lot of sense where this ancient Albion consciousness or race at the time were aware of these stargates, were aware of this energy line, and it had like a relationship to the earth, very similar to the Coggi Indians that you mentioned before.
Coggi Indians, yeah.
And the Coggi Indians, as you mentioned, have this awareness to these energy lines that Lisa Renee is talking about. It just kind of all started to make sense to me when I was listening to it. And that St. Ives Bay is actually one of the places for these stargates. Now, what really blew me away was the symbol of that rainbow. Because the beginning and the end of the rainbow is suggested in something else of research where that is the confirmation of the stargate. It's literally saying that they say angels. They're basically saying that this is where there's an evidence of angels. Now, I haven't found, I don't know exactly what that means, but it just kind of all puts it together to like something special about this place energetically. And that's, I believe that there is some kind of stargate perspective on that, as well as in another place just not too far from Stonehenge, the Vale of Pusey is another area, and that's been mentioned by other people like Bobby Lee. I think there's another guy, I'll put his links on. He explains these stargates and how they work, just like Lisa Renee does. And if you go down the research of Ashayana Dean from 1998 to 2010, it'll explain this huge rabbit hole of what this is about. So when you saw the seals and the rainbow, to me, that was confirmation, and I was very excited by it, and just the whole journey that you did to try and find these wells, and then in between one area to the next, suddenly there's this confirmation that, is that a stargate? And the seal's kind of looking at you going, yes, it is. That's what it was kind of saying to me,
Yeah.
So I advise anyone just to go and have a look at the journey itself. That's is on the YouTube channel Age of Albion.
Age of Albion, yes, yeah.
Where James goes on this journey and makes 10 videos, and you can see the progression as you move along, and how excited you get, how excited you are.
Yeah.
I feel that energy, and that's really good to capture.
Yeah.
And so in terms of finding those wells themselves, the caves, what sort of app were you using? Was it just like a Google Maps or something? Were you just punching it in, or was there something specific?
Yeah, I just when I was trying to find one that I didn't quite know where it was, I just put the name of the spring on the internet, and it came up with a rough postcode for and then I drove to that postcode, and then if I couldn't find it, I would use the map to try and understand how far I am away from it, using Google Maps, something as simple as Google Maps. But even that was only a tool. I kind of had to use my own initiative. It's like with Fairy Well in Port Kidney Sands. That well wasn't on Google Maps. I had to find that completely myself without any sort of maps. I had to understand the kind of rough directions that they were giving, and then finally find this little path that was not a path anymore. It was completely overgrown. But I thought, I just had an instinct, yeah, this is the path. And it was right down there. I saw offerings, little ribbons and banners left on the trees. And I'm like, yes, it's down here. So I carried on going down here, and that was one of my favourite wells, Fairy Well. I've just finished the water from Fairy Well now. I bottled a load of water from Fairy Well.
Right, so you were drinking from these wells as well. This was your water source.
Of course, yeah. Yes, these wells are what we should be drinking, the primary water. And so I could expand on that primary water in this podcast as well. So
yeah, do explain what you mean by primary water, and because these wells are quite significant and quite special. It wasn't just finding something from history. You were finding the essence of the earth, really, wasn't it? Just elaborate on that a bit, please.
Yeah, so water is the most important thing on earth, and the ancients always used to say the waters, and the waters with an S, so in plural. So by waters, they were referring to the waters below and the waters above. And the waters above are what is governed by the normal water table, the rain cycle. And these are the types of springs or the rivers that may run dry or drier depending on seasonal rain, depending on heat, and everything like that. And these are the types of waters that have been poisoned, and kind of we have caused the destruction of these waters by building on them, by destroying their habitats, by poisoning with things like glyphosate and chemicals. They've all been leaked into these water supplies and affected the waters. And
Yeah.
this is the most terrible thing that now the Kogi are pointing our attention on, because they are reading the water. They've got a high ability to read the water, because from a young age they were in darkness for 15 years. They've developed these skills, and they can read the water. The water's a living being. So they read the water and they say what the condition of the water is like. And they can do this from the sacred sites. And the sacred sites are the Avebury, things like these, the stone circles, everything like this. These are connected to all the sites in the world through the ley lines. So through like the Michael ley line, Belinus ley line, it goes through all the different countries, even to Colombia, all the different ley lines. They can communicate and understand and communicate with all the sacred sites via the actual sacred site, e.g. the stone circle, sending the energy across on the ley lines. This is how they communicate with the world without going there. This is how they know what's going on.
It's like a spiritual internet of some kind, isn't
it? Exactly. It's like a web. It's like how we communicate now with the internet. People think it's a crazy idea, but how is it crazy if you're on the computer now watching me with waves that you can't see? It's the same thing. It's not crazy. It's something that is second nature to them. They can't understand why we can't do it. They can't understand.
That's very true. That's very true.
Anyway, back to the springs. So they understand that there's the water, how important the water is, and we need to look after the waters above first, because that's the layer that we've destroyed. But we need to put awareness in the fact that there's waters below. These are most of the springs, the ancient springs. It's called primary water that is constantly being renewed in the Earth's womb, far below any sort of man-made layer, because we haven't affected them. It's so far below the Earth, and they've come out for millions, thousands of millions of years. They finally come up the water out into the springs, and this is created by gas. It's H2O, hydrogen, oxygen. It's created and pushed up finally through these springs. So it's constantly renewing itself. It's an element, just like fire doesn't run out, just like air doesn't run out, just like Great Spirit doesn't run out, just like Earth doesn't run out. The soil's constantly renewing itself. The water's constantly renewing itself. We can't have a water shortage when it comes to the primary water springs. Yes, the waters above can run out, and they're affecting in a spiritual level the waters below, because everything's connected. Just like I can affect the consciousness of the world with my thoughts, just like this is all like just facts now. This is basic stuff. We can affect things with our minds, with our hearts, because the energy field that we give off, like my heart can give off an energy field and affect everything else. So the waters can affect the waters below, even though they're not directly physically connected. So the waters below are the primary waters. This is the waters that a lot of the time, not all of the time, that I've been seeing in these springs. Some of them are groundwater. So these are running drier depending on seasonal rain. But the ones that have the primary water springs have never run dry in the history of mankind. All of the people that have remembered these springs that are 90 to 100 years old now have always seen these springs running, because they've never run dry, recording prehistory, pre-Celtic people I'm talking about. These are when these springs are still running. And there's one near me called St. Mary's that has been running since prehistory, and is still running today, that's been covered over by the big corporations that we have a duty to find. These are primary water springs that we need to be drinking, not just because of the mineral content, but because of the spiritual connection that we'll have to the earth, because of the purest water. It is purest. So it's even the soul of the water we're connecting with and we're communicating with.
Wow. So this, when you deep down into the earth, with all the crystals and the minerals, it's also, so that's one aspect to it. But what you're saying also, there's a consciousness to the water itself. And I mean, there's a variety of experiments that have gone on. Emoto, I believe, is a Japanese scientist who took pictures of frozen water, and it was people's thoughts that changed the shapes of the crystals within the water itself. There's someone else now. I'll have to put a link to this person, because there was someone who did a talk in Glastonbury a few months back on that. She did other experiments like that, where she literally put a finger into water and then froze it, and the image that came about was the finger, but it had a little cut in her nail that happened weeks later, right? So that just freaked me out. Like, how is water able to sort of access the future? What is that about? So another thing on that ancient water as well is, I think recently they just found, when I say they, scientists, and I saw this on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube, that some divers were down in the ocean and they found clear water underneath the ocean. So this is like drinking water. It's not salt water, and it's a heavier, denser water, and it was underneath the salt water. And they were literally had cameras, and they were getting bags of it, and they were buckets of it, and bucketing it, and then taking it up, and they were testing it. And it was genuinely, this pure water that you talk about.
Yeah.
So there are discoveries to it, and this idea of consciousness. If you go down that rabbit hole and a connection with consciousness and water, you will find experiments and evidence. And I feel if you actually do go into this kind of investigation, your life changes.
Yes,
life changes. Your environment changes when you start opening up to nature and its consciousness. The trees behind me. I have a communication with them every time I go to see them. Obviously, this is not live now, and I'm not there, but it's a very special place for me. And when I go, my energy just completely changes. All my stresses disappear. So this idea of this consciousness in water, I embrace it 100%, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But for anybody else who hasn't, I will put links to everything I've talked about in the bottom, and you can go and see for yourself. So when you found these wells, first of all, was this is what you were talking about at the talk? This is the information you were sharing, basically. So part of what you're trying to do, or not trying to do, but just part of your journey, is to bring this awareness to all of us, really. And close to you, are you where you live now in the north? Is there a place that you can access the water itself? This water?
So there is, but the closest place would be St. Mary's Spring near me, literally right near. But this is the most powerful spring. That is one of the most in the country. The people from Ireland used to come all the way to see from Ireland. This is how powerful it was. And they have springs in Ireland, but there's one reason he wanted to come here, to see this water. And this is the spring that I'm trying to find, that I'm trying to reintroduce. And by reintroducing it, change the collective consciousness of the whole world. It's that powerful water. It changes the energies as it flows. It's like blocking a vein in yourself. It will block your whole body. So blocking a vein of the earth blocks the whole earth. And by releasing that vein, it releases the energy. So this is the closest spring, but obviously I can't access it right now. And it's the same with Avon Park in Preston. That is a whole park full of springs. It's a spring park. And the fountain, the council have said that the fountain is run from the spring. Okay. Well, they said that the people can't access the spring. It's just the council that can access it. So that just proves these controllers, they're trying to block our access supply, hide the springs, and put it in front of our faces. And the only access point I could find is a little runoff from the spring that I was drinking for 2 years, that I'm almost certain was, I was all right. I've been drinking it for 2 years, but it tasted phenomenal. So I was that desperate to find a spring. It meant so much to me that I was literally drinking spring, the runoff from the spring. And that was the only one I could find until I found one in Silverdale, which I am thinking it's a mix between primary water and groundwater, because it does change with seasonal cycles. But it is a very ancient place, because people from the Netherlands used to do hand fasting ceremony there. Okay, they used to come all the way from Holland, I think it was, to do a ceremony at Silverdale, just before the Lake District it is.
Right. So that's just a bit further up north from where you are, yeah. Yeah,
it's further up north. And then the water that I get from now is a place called Great Budworth in Cheshire. So this is a very incredible structure where there's an actual pipe that's actually looked after for once by the people and by the actual council there. For some reason, I have no idea why this is the only spring that's looked after, but that is the water that matches the best water that I've tasted in my life. Like I've tasted incredible water in the time in the mountains of the Alps and places like this, and this is the best water. This is incredible. This is how we can bottle a huge bottle, like 5-litre bottle, in a matter of 30 seconds. So this is how good the flow is. So yeah.
And so you can definitely taste the difference like obviously tap water to bottled water is going to be a difference in taste, but then
Yeah.
aside from those two, this is an even better taste than
Oh yeah, yeah.
say the bottled water.
Yeah, because I'm like a wine connoisseur when it comes to water. I
A
can
water
like
connoisseur.
a water connoisseur. I can literally put you could blindfold me and you could put 4 glasses of water, maybe tap water, maybe Evian, Great
Right.
Woodworth water, spring water, and then maybe some Buxton or Volvic. I don't know what you would have. And I will be able to tell you which one is which by just tasting them. I've done it
Wow.
before.
Have you done
Multiple
it? Oh,
times.
brilliant.
Multiple
Oh,
times.
you should do a little video of that on your
I could do actually, yeah,
on
yeah.
your YouTube thing, because for me, you know, being aware to this water and learning from you actually, and this is why we're doing this podcast, you know, because I think it's very important to get this information out, to get your journey out, really, because the idea of just going on a journey to explore something that you're curious about, that you've been researching and looking into, and then, you know, having that kind of experience of the amounts of wells that you found, I think is phenomenal. But one of the things I started looking at was where's the wells that might be next to me. So I live in Southport, and the closest one for me apparently is Liverpool Cathedral. Now I learned this from Manic Organic again, because they've got all kinds of people that come in and talk about stuff, and information gets passed on. And like, you know, we both get our vegetables there, and it's the only you told me it was the only organic farm shop in
It
all of
seems
Lancashire.
in the whole of Lancashire. See, I've been trying to find one. I may be wrong, but it's the only one I could find.
See, Lancashire is Southport's actually still Merseyside, but Skatesbrick must be just in that Lancashire area.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's just on the edge of Lancashire, really. But to have an organic farm shop is like a blessing these days, you know, because I always thought about supermarkets, and I think this is more of an American thing when they talk about health food in the supermarkets. And I heard this on a podcast where someone said, if there's a health food section, what does that mean about all the other food that's there?
Exactly.
You know? And that's what I think about when I think of supermarkets and convenience stores, and I'm like, what kind of food is that? When I go to an organic shop and I have, you know, I just bought some sweet potatoes, which are like this big, you know, and I get all my oils from there. I get my soap, my toothpaste, you know. I got arts and crafts and crystals and
Christmas presents,
you know. So, you know, I just want to plug Manic Organic, because it's always something that comes up, and it's what brought where we connected. We met there, and it's kind of like what actually brought this podcast into life is the fact that Manic Organic still exists and, you know, constantly goes on. And farmers in general in this country are going through a lot of problems, you know, a lot of issues that, you know, is probably for another podcast and another discussion. But I've started to like talk to them and find out what are the challenges that we're going to be facing. And I think obtaining good food is probably the biggest thing, you know.
It is.
Because there's like the situation where it seems like the recent adjustments in the political realm have allowed for big conglomerates easy access to buy out these farms. And so when that happens, you know, these farm shops, these local farm shops, organic or not, are not going to be there, you know. I don't feel so support for the farmers. Visit your local farm, go and find out what they're going through. Try to get as many vegetables and fruits and local produce from the area that you're in, just for anyone that's listening. And then maybe go and look for those water sources. You know, James I'd say you're probably one of the leading pioneers of searching out these water sources. And so those videos that you've done is a great blessing for all of us to be inspired by.
And just want to mention as well, going back to the farms before we move on from this subject, but going back to the farms, I've done a video, it was only yesterday actually, on vertical farming and how that's going to be the next big deception to come in, because in pretense of natural farming and not using pesticides, they're bringing in these farms which are growing vertically on a plastic container type thing. And a lot of the time they're not using soil, but they're using added minerals, and they're saying, oh, it's just the same as the soil. It's not, because the soil is the earth, it's the land, it's Mother Earth. It's not just about minerals, it's about the energy, the electromagnetism, the magic that's coming from that soil that we're then ingesting. And not only that, they're not even using sunlight a lot of the time. They're using LED lights to grow your food. This is something out of George Orwell. This is
Yes.
ridiculous. Honestly, it's they're hijacking every side because they know you're awakening. They know that people's awareness wants to go back to organic. So they're hijacking the organic side as well. Very
Yes.
clever.
In fact, Clay from Manic Organic I was talking to him yesterday about this, and he was saying, and we were referring somewhat to the Coggy Indians as well. And he was saying, we this planet has been here for such a long time, and we've always had a relationship with it to produce food. At the end of the day, most of us don't know how to produce food. We don't have a relationship with the earth anymore, with the trees, with the ground. We don't know the soil. We don't. It's just all now convenience bought from stores, and I think we're all kind of aware to that, and it's just we're surviving. We're just getting on. This is how our world's changing. But just to give an attention to the fact that putting your hands into the earth and growing seeds from the earth, there's a very spiritual connection with the earth itself that we're lost.
From it. Yeah. And get your feet on the earth as well. Get your feet on the earth, everybody. Ground yourself to the electromagnetic grid connection to the earth.
So you do a lot of barefoot walking then, James?
Barefoot walking, barefoot grounding as much as I can. Sometimes in the winter it's a bit cold on your feet in England, so that's why other hotter countries sometimes better. But as much as I could, spring, summer, any excuse, top off, sunlight exposure, get your feet on the earth. Your essentials of life is good water, good food, sunlight, grounding, good sleep, good thoughts, and pure heart.
Right, brilliant. That just makes sense. We don't have to go into any kind of referencing of a science. Everyone just knows that what you just said then makes
basic
sense.
Principles that don't need explaining.
And so when you were down in Cornwall, did you meet anybody else that sort of had this similar awareness, or maybe gave you hints and clues to where some of these wells and springs might be? Did you find that there's others that have this awareness in any way?
Definitely. It was a very, very interesting story, actually. It started in Avebury. I met this lady who I had an instinct to go up to and approach. She was looking at a tree, and I saw not many people stop to look at a tree. Okay, so I knew this lady would be different because she stopped to look at a tree. Very simple. And she was dressed in a nice way, looking at the tree. I could see she had a connection. So I thought, I've got an instinct to go and speak to this lady. So we had a conversation for a long time. It seemed about half an hour, maybe more. I had a conversation about true Atlantis, about the old world. She was on her own pilgrimage to England from Australia, living in Australia. And she'd met a lady in Boscastle who showed her around the springs. And this is the lady that she introduced me to. So then I could go and see this lady in Boscastle and make connections there. So it was only because my attraction in the present moment, by approaching and listening to my feelings in that present moment, affected my future. This is why everything exists in the present. It's the only thing that creates the future.
Brilliant, James. That's great insights. I agree with that 100%. So if you hadn't made an effort to just connect with this person and question why you're looking at the tree or whatever it was, the rest of the journey might have been different,
Exactly.
Although knowing you and knowing this kind of journey that you're on, there might have been someone else that you might have met.
There might have been always someone else.
Directed you.
There always been someone to push forward on the journey. Because then I met Lucy. She's the one who showed me around Boscastle, the amazing ancient woodland there, and the spring in the middle of that ancient woodland. It blew my mind. It was incredible. One of the best.
I have to go back and watch that. That's
I don't think you've seen
watched
that.
as many as
that
possible.
one just at the end of that last episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to go back to that and just it's very inspiring to watch your videos, to be honest. It's in terms of also doing my own journey and doing my own videos. It's like every time I watch, I'm like, right, let's go and edit, let's go and film, let's get out there, and just explore. And there's so much around us. I'm kind of on my own journey that is going to lead across the country, but I haven't even left the area because there's so many symbols and churches and signs and woods and old locations that speak of the past and are speaking to me in a way. So, at some point we'll get across the country, and there's some wonderful things on this island of Great Britain, United Kingdom, but I would say the ancient Albion island. Did you come across any information that sort of highlighted that in a way in terms of like old remnants of ancient Albion?
Yeah, I think that Cornwall and Devon especially Cornwall when I was seeing the springs, but Devon also, because I didn't see as much as Devon, but I went to Devon afterwards, south of Devon, and I saw amazing leech well. So the journey continued when I did a video on Totnes, on the Start Bay and Leech well. So that was also continuing. Didn't expect to come across that spring, but the whole area had an original Celtic pre-Christian feel, because obviously the Christians came over, and like I say, we don't really want to offend anyone, but it was very true how the Christians came over and started redesignating the old Druid sites to their own. They started building churches on original stone circles and Druid groves, tree groves. They started renaming the springs into saints. That's why we always get a Saint Spring, or even like a Saint Uni or a Saint Christopher, Saint anything. It's always a saint. It would have been even a different name before. Maybe it wouldn't have a name before. And all of these different types of things. And I did a good video, I think it was in a part 3 or part 2. I think it was part 3, where I came across this passage in the Holy Wells of Cornwall book, and about the Christians coming over and redesignating pagan sites, baptizing the converted, and slaying dragons. And
Wow.
this is, for me, this, and also curing evil in the sick. So that sounds brilliant to some people, but for me, I feel like I can see through that, in the sense that the evil in the sick really could mean the mental, according to them, the mental that are not following what they want, similar to now, they're not following the mainstream. The slaying the dragon could mean the slaying of the dragon ley line, could mean the ley lines, because they were called dragon lines originally instead of ley lines. And these could be these very deep carving crosses on stone circles, which means putting a stamp and taking over what was already here, that type of thing.
Brilliant. I'm glad you said that, because that's actually what I'm going into in my episode 3, where I there is this perspective that the dragon line is very similar. Well, the geomancy sort of perspective of things, goes back into China about 5,000 years ago, and they would call them the lei, L-E-I, and they would refer to as the dragon or serpent lines, and these were the energy lines that we've been referring to, and that these points of reference and these druid circles or stone circles or trees acted as a kind of acupuncture point. But
pressure point, yeah.
But the actual needle itself in acupuncture, what happens is in acupuncture they put a needle into it and it affects the energy flow. And I feel that's what's happening with the churches, with anything that's built on these energy lines with a kind of spiritual intention, is doing something to the energy flow of that energy line. That's a theory, and that's what I'm basically my hypothesis in the presentations of the videos. But what is interesting also to back that up is that on many of these churches we see the gargoyles.
Mm-hmm.
Now the gargoyle is where the name came from in the 7th century by someone that is renowned, or the story is that they slayed a dragon, they subdued a dragon-like figure with big wings. That's what the story is. Now, like you just said, is that just this interpretation of this kind of symbolic meaning of what they were saying was, putting a new religious perspective onto the old perspective on an energy, on a spiritual energy line that's been flowing throughout this island for years, because it's a worldwide thing. And when you say the Christians, you also referring to the Roman Christians, because that's where this sort of modern day Christianity has developed from, and that sort of it's a big subject. But Rome itself has done this action to pretty much most of the world. There's Sri Lanka's got stories that are horrific, and South America's got its own stories. This doesn't mean anything to do with the actual religious perspective itself.
No, it's nothing to do with seeing Jesus. Jesus went far beyond the Christianity, the figure. You can go into something else, but we're not offending the religion itself or the actual views. But we're offending the people that have manipulated that religion, and they've got
organization.
The organization,
the organization. I mean, it's I was raised as a Roman Catholic, actually. That's where I was. But as you kind of get older and you start really questioning, and you start stepping away from this, what everybody else is thinking, and looking for yourself, things become a little different, and that's everyone else's journey. I'm not going to sort of elaborate too much on that, but what we're talking about here really makes sense and resonates. And as we meet others that are also on this journey, we kind of find people who bring different parts of their investigation, and that helps to make sense of our own, So it's great to connect with everybody and talk about it. And one of the things I wanted to sort of go into was your documentary now, just the big 4-hour-long documentary.
Yeah.
What started that? Because that's you and Armani that put that together. Just
yeah.
two guys from Lancashire, hanging out one day, and next minute you got this 4-hour video on ancient Albion that just blew my mind. Really. So where did that come from?
Yeah, so he's always been my neighbour, and I never really got to know him until he started giving out the newspaper The Light, if you've ever heard of The Light.
I have, yeah.
Now is actually bought by the government, so they've even bought that. And so
really,
the hijacking everything. He's done his research. He said, I'm not going to give out these newspapers anymore because they've been bought by the government themselves, because they take over everything that comes in. They'll bribe the people. Can we change this narrative? So anything that's in that newspaper now, take it with a pinch of salt, because it will definitely be not the truth.
Wow. So, good to know. I did not know that.
Yeah, very interesting. So we met at that. So I was like, whoa, you're giving out The Light. That's different. He's like trying to expose some truth here. And so we had a conversation for, lasted all year, and into getting to know each other on that sort of level, and kind of giving each other lessons into what we know. And it kind of went from there, where we became great friends. And it came from a space where we were like, are we going to do a documentary on old world, on Tartaria maybe? But then we went beyond Tartaria. We even realized that Tartaria is a deception. It goes beyond Tartaria. The old world goes beyond Tartaria. That was just one civilization that were building these structures, but these were even a takeover, because they used the gargoyle, they used the symbols of like a takeover. And they went out of balance, just like Atlantis was originally pure. Then it got wiped out because the stories, it got too technologically advanced. It got too out of balance. So we kind of went on a journey to get to the true old world, the balanced old world that lived in harmony with nature whilst having that technology at the same time. And they developed that. So the documentary, we were going to just do it on the history, but then I realized that if we're going to do this documentary, we may as well do it properly and explain the bigger picture. So we started off with sacred water. We've got a whole chapter on Masaru Emoto, the molecular structure of water, the springs, Penwitham Springs. We've got a whole chapter on St. Mary's Spring in Penwitham. And then we've got the hidden history of Martin Mere Lake, the connection to King Arthur. We've got a section on King Arthur towards the end. And it goes to water, then it goes to the old world, and we talk about Tartaria. We talk about the pure old world and the difference between the two, and how we've been deceived, but also how we can get to the truth by tapping into the land itself, speaking to the stone, speaking to the land, the sun, all these natural forces. And it kind of goes from there, where we then go to the luminaries, the life-death cycle. We've got King Arthur, like I said, we've got Hyperborea, we've got Atlantis. Hyperborea is that hidden land. It was his idea. He was very fascinated by Hyperborea, and even I am. So we've done we don't really know the truth of Hyperborea, but we're putting it out there that there is a possibility of a hidden land at the north, in Hyperborea. I don't know if you've heard of that, Liam. Hyperborea.
I haven't. It was in the video that it came up, but there was so much information in that video that now that you mention it, I'm gonna have to go back and just go back into it, because I don't know much about that. The video for me that really blew me away was what you're talking about with the churches, and how there is this energy that seems like they're designed for to be antennas for some kind of energy, a terrestrial energy. And this just merged. This was exactly what I'm trying to do with my churches and trees videos, and I'm on episode 3 at the moment, editing it. And when I saw what you brought about, the symbol of that circle, is it a magnetron? It looks like
they call it the cavity magnetron, because I got it off a documentary a long time ago. But it's like cymatic frequency, where there would just be sound vibration in these geometric shapes in the structures.
Right. Because I've actually found a YouTube link that's got an animation, and I'm going to use this animation in my videos, where it shows the magnetron of 8 circles and how it fits within the flower of life. So that those symbols, if you look at them and study them, it's a perspective or an essence of the knowledge of the flower of life, but how the sacred geometry itself is within that, and within that sort of idea of creation. So for you to sort of highlight that and then pinpoint all these places in Preston, the local area, and I think up in the Lake District, how
Yeah.
they had these symbols of an energy, a known energy that was drawn in, and there was always water that was next to it
Always
as well.
water, because the
Yeah,
water was there first. This is why it's so important, because I believe they were harnessing this energy that was already on these sites when the Druids and the pre-Druids were there, because then they were built on. Remember, they came over and built the churches and the structures after on a specific site. So they'd be able to read the energy of the site and then use that energy that's already there, because there's always a spring there. And obviously you can't build a spring, it's natural. It's been there before. The structures are then built after, and they're always built next to springs because the spring is where the energy focal point is. Then they use that energy after, maybe to create free energy, maybe to take away from that energy, maybe to use it. This is where we're trying to work out what happened. Maybe some
brilliant.
used it, maybe some went against it. This type of thing.
So this would then take us back to Avebury, because then, Avebury is right next to Silbury Hill, and Silbury Hill is, which we didn't mention, is actually a cylindrical pyramid that goes back 6,000 years. I mean, they don't know when it was. It's very, there's not a lot
It's
of
just an
written
estimate.
word on- it's an estimate, but it's still the UK's, or Britain, or Albion, I'm going to
Europe's
say,
largest man-made hill, apparently.
but a pyramid. It's our own. We've got a pyramid in the UK. And most people don't know that there's a pyramid, a cylindrical pyramid.
Yeah.
And so it could suggest that in Avebury, that sort of moat around the outside was this utilizing the water. Maybe the spring was around where Silbury Hill was, and was then funneled to that area, and the stones were this kind of acupuncture needles to the energy. Now, there is a link I'm going to put in the bottom where there's someone doing a presentation on looking from above, what Avebury looks like from above, and that it's actually a calendar of our solar system, and that it goes back. It either goes back 25,000 years or 250,000 years, depending on these, where the points of where these stones were, and he really goes into this detail. So I will put that in the link below, just so that, to back up the fact that we're onto something here. We're investigating, we're on our own journey of discovery, we're sharing this and sharing it with everybody else, but that there is evidence. Once you go down this rabbit hole, you'll start to find things, and you might find things that you don't like, but stick to the things that inspire you and empower you and inform you. I think that's what it's really all about, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very easy to get down an intellectual kind of route with all these documentaries and films that are coming out about the old world. But it's all right looking at books and computers and films, but without going out there and getting in tune with the land, you'll never know the truth.
Definitely. I think that's where it really is. It's because, we've got this mental construct of how to identify things that we've been brought up with through schooling. I have words for it, education and everything. And so we look at things from the mental perspective. We've lost that way of feeling. There's the other way of knowing is through feeling. And it's taken me a long time to go from my mind to my heart and feel the energy of the room, to feel someone else's energy, to feel the trees, not to think about what I'm seeing. So I agree with what you're saying there, to go out there and test that awareness to see what is it you feel. And that's why I question in on that. So when you made this large documentary, how long did it take for you to make the property of Albion?
I mean, Abbas, the guy that made it, he called the Marnie Studio Productions, but yeah, Abbas, who made it, he took him about half a year, I think, to make it. About 7 or 8 months, I think it was, because he was working like sometimes 12-hour days at the end to make it and get it done by September. We wanted it out by then. We really needed it to get out, and the first one had about 12,000 views, which was more than we've had on the channel before. The latest one's only had 400. Then the latest one's the one that I need people to watch, because we've added the new sections on the La Manche Zodiac, which is the Zodiac at Winter Hill. At Anglezark Moor on Winter Hill, and it's the largest terrestrial zodiac in the world, apparently. So a terrestrial zodiac is where the star formation are mirrored in the land. So the land, e.g., natural streams, the roads, things like these are like mirroring actually, for example, Cancer, the crab is mirrored as a crab in the land below. And then it's also to do with the churches are mirroring the stars above.
Wow. So you're saying that the stars above are mirrored in some of the structures built around Winter Hill area? and the
Yeah,
northwest?
so Winter Hill area is in the sign of Capricorn, so it's mirroring Capricorn below. And then it also goes as far as Manchester, with Manchester Airport, and Chester and Lancashire. So that's like the area it covers. And people have
Wow.
recognised it's only new, it's information I've only just come across, but I thought I had a call to just put it in because I'm going to do a lot more research on it. But there's, for example, in the constellation of Taurus, which is in the Garstang area, you have a lot of pubs named after Bull. So you have, and Bull is the Taurus. So it comes from the Taurus constellation, and this is where we have the Bull. And then in Leyland we have the Seven Stars pub. So it's also in the names of the
Pleiades.
of the place of the, yeah, the Pleiades. I think it is that one. And
Yeah.
this is what it's all about. And we needed to put it in the documentary because I came across this information, and I don't know 100% about it. I admit a lot of it most of the documentary is coming from, because purely from the heart, from my own research in the land. But this I just came across a couple of weeks before, and we had to put something together to shed a light on this area because all my work, a lot of the work is about the northwest. And if this is fully true, then it makes a lot of sense when it comes to how powerful the northwest is and the focal point and how many stone circles were originally on Winter Hill, because everything emanates from there. Apparently, all of the kind of the ley lines emanate from Winter Hill, and I've heard that one of them even goes to Giza pyramid in Egypt, and one of them emanates from the Angles-Arc Moor.
Wow. This is blowing my mind again. You know, we're going to have to really go down a rabbit hole on this one. Maybe, you know, get together and you can show me some of these places. You know, we do some more research, and I'll get the drone up, and then we can see if these formations, you know, exist. We can study them. You know, so
Yeah.
I think this opens up the opportunity for, you know, making a documentary on this in the future whenever we've got the time. Obviously, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but that's fascinating because I only just went to Winter Hill quite recently, and I had no knowledge on this whatsoever. And it was only afterwards when I did a small video on it, you said, "Oh, this is where the zodiac research is in the middle of, you know, basically."
Yeah.
So it's I'm still learning all the time, and I appreciate everything that you're bringing to the surface for us all to, you know, go out and look at, and that's what the prophecy of Albion did for me. You know, it confirmed a lot of the things that I was looking at, but also then opened up the research deeper, especially the part on churches, and especially the old world and the symbols of, you know, how the churches were all the, not just churches, but the buildings were acting as like antennas. I'm focusing just on the churches because it basically means that I can put my drone up and I don't get into trouble, you know, because you can't fly over residential areas, and on church grounds it's pretty cool. But at the same time, you know, I started falling into this kind of research by accident, and then meeting you, it's like that synchronicity again.
Yes,
that seems to assist the research, assist the journey, and, you know, talking to others that are doing this really does help. So have you met a lot of other people along the way that are like, I think I've already mentioned this before, but not just in Cornwall, but when you're going on the road, do you meet other people that are open to these ideas?
Oh, for sure. I met another guy in Cornwall, Lenny, and I featured him on the YouTube. He's awake to a lot of the deception, and you always meet people awake at some level at their own, you know, unique stage in the awakening process too. Because there's some people that are awake to certain things, other people awake to a bigger picture, other people are just getting involved in it, or some people have always been the same. For me, I've always seen kind of the truth, like the feeling of the truth, when I first was like 12. And that's just where I first started writing my books, when I was 12. So I've always
When
felt
you were
that there was a
12?
connection. 12, yes.
That's right, because you've got 2 books out at the moment, or you've
One,
got one
book
book
out
out.
at the moment, but the other one I'm working on to republish.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're still making the videos as you go. You're still making, like, the latest video you just made as well was about the farmers and the how the growing food ideas are going to be shifted in the future, unless we get involved. And I think everyone does have a part to play. You know, when you're talking about, you know, meeting others who are awake or maybe not necessarily awake to the idea that there's more to life than this. There's more to the political structure. There's more to, you know, the way of living on this planet and getting food for ourselves, rather than just accepting what has been part of a condition, I suppose. But everybody has a part to play, and I find that it doesn't matter who's awake or who's not. Everyone is saying something that helps the journey along. That's always speaking, about this journey.
Yeah, you always meet the right person at the right time. Like yourself and Clayton and my family as well. Get always on their own. They're with me in this journey, and that's how special it is to always have people on the same journey or on a similar journey, but their own unique version of that same path.
That's right, because your sister is also very awake to this, and she's got her own book of poetry that I've actually got. And in it, she talks about how she was inspired by this kind of divine connection. It just comes in, and she writes it down. I open up the book every now and again. Every day I wake up and I open up the book, and I just look at the page that is open to me, and it speaks directly to me almost. It's like the divine is speaking directly to me. It's uncanny. Kind of blown away by that as well. So hats off to your sister for doing that.
We'll link that book as well, both the books, The Nourished Soul and my book, The Destiny of the World, which is a fictitious book similar to The Alchemist, if you've read it, in the sense that it's a fictitious book, but it's got like the truth and lessons inside the book. So this
was something that just came to you, like inspired to you. I mean, like a lot of folk at your age are probably running around different pubs and chasing after football teams and certain types of clothing and the society itself. Why have you not done that, James?
I think for me, I've always been more interested in life and living it and not wasting it on things that don't matter. And this is why Destiny of the World came, because it started when I was working at the first garden centre I worked at, on the ley line that I then found out after. So I'll talk about that in a second. But for the book, so I've started writing about this story here, about and it was like the journey that I kind of felt in my own heart, and I kind of wrote it in a sense that it was kind of me, but it's things that haven't happened, in a sense that I needed to get a message out in a story form, but also things that these things that have happened in that book and that haven't happened. It's kind of mixed up in like a vision in what has happened in my present moment then and now, and it's all like kind of into this story form where you can decipher it as you want. That book, it'll hit you where it wants, a bit like my sister's book, The Nourished Soul. It'll hit you where you need it to. So The Destiny of the World is all about a young man who is working at the garden centre, and then he goes on his own journey to discover the truth and meets an old man who is teaching him about Albion, about life, and about what it truly means, why people are so asleep. And he goes on his own journey to combat the controllers of this world, and to then at the end unite the world himself by meeting people at the right time.
Wow, that's good. I'm just started reading that at the moment, but my time is very limited, but I will finish that book if it's for the inspiration itself, and just to find out what the answer would be, to figuring it all out, and I just want to come back to that idea that you were working at a garden center, and there was this energy line going through it. So how did you know? What was the feeling that you knew there was an energy line there?
So back in 2020, when I first arrived at the garden centre, I'd always called this field at the back the land of Albion, because it just had such a nice feel to it. And I used to just take my shoes off at lunch breaks and just relax at the back field and take it all in. And there was one time I just did a meditation on my lunch break, just to still my mind, and a parrot just then showed up, just right behind, like right close to me. And I was like, whoa, like, is that like an omen, maybe telling me something from that meditation? It's a very powerful meditation. It was very amazing feelings I captured. And then it wasn't the same day, but soon after, it was like a whirlwind. It wasn't even windy, but like the hay that had just been cut. Maybe there's a logical explanation for this. Maybe tell me in the comments if there is. But it just picked up on its own in like a spiral shape, and then just flew across the field on its own, this grass. And I was like, I don't know what to say about that. Like that, just
like a little ball of grass,
of grass. But it was like big ball of grass, just like spiraled up and then just flew across the field on its own.
Because what's fascinating about this story and where you were in Tarleton, I've managed to locate an energy line that goes through Sollum, and it actually goes through Tarleton, goes through Ruffordale Hall, and there's a road that go. I don't think it's the A50, it's the A59 that actually goes along there, and then it reaches the junction at Tarleton that then goes on to Preston. But the energy line goes through. I don't know if it goes through that junction, but it's very close to it.
So just before that junction, it goes through the field where I did that meditation.
Right, so that's where that's the garden centre.
That's only after I found out, when I was researching the ley lines, I zoomed in and it goes through Sooty, his garden, which is right there, and then goes through the field, the exact point where I have been experiencing these feelings all since 2020. And I only figured this out in 2023 or 2023 at the end of 2023.
Wow, because there's an app that I'm going to put a link to where you can actually, it highlights where all these ley lines are. And going back along that ley line is where there's like a focal point of many ley lines, because they all go to this point. I don't know exactly what the name of this point is, but it's where they all originate from this area. Do you know
Low Stone Circle in the Peak District, you mean?
Harbour Low, that's it. It's called Harbour Low, yes.
Arbour, I think it is, Harbour Low. And that's where they all emanate from. Apart from the Bellinus spine of Albion, all the main ley lines kind of emanate from that stone circle.
Because on this app you can zoom in and you can see it's like a sort of Google map thing, and there's this looks like a henge.
It's a giant henge. We put it in the documentary, a whole section on that ley line. Right.
I'm going to go back to that because I'm sure you mentioned that, and because I've got so much information, like I'm always taking on board a lot of information. It's hard to know where it all came from, but yeah, I think that's what inspired me to get that application on my phone.
Because I didn't even know there was an app.
Yeah, there's an app for the water sources as well, by the way, all the wells.
Is that which one was that then? Is that not Find a Spring, is it?
I think it is. Because
that's the one that only kind of works in America, I think. There's not many here.
No, it's not an app, it's a web page, and it is based in America, but you can go to the British Isles, and that's how I confirmed.
Oh, right.
That's the one in Liverpool. It says there's a spring there on the cathedral.
Brilliant. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's amazing when, like, what's actually there to prove these things and show. Like, I couldn't believe there was an app for an energy line to prove that the energy line was there. So this energy line apparently went through King Arthur's lake. So we're going to get onto that.
Yes, Martin Mere.
That's what was in the documentary that blew me away as well. I mean, so many things blow me away with the information that we're talking about here. But the journey that I'm going to be doing from Southport to the Bellinus line, because that's what I'm fascinated with, and that's what the books I've got is the Bellinus line. It will go through this area that would have been the largest freshwater lake in the country at the time. Now this has been shifted now to agricultural land. The land's been taken back, but Martin Mere is the last remnants of this lake. What did you find out about this lake, and how did you connect it to stories of King Arthur?
So this was another interesting story. In that same greenhouse where I saw the parrot at Sooty's, I saw a map of the area, and it had a sword, and right near Tarleton. And I was like, what is King Arthur's sword doing in Tarleton? Because I always conditioned to believe King Arthur was always in the south. So I was like, well, what's that sword doing there? Because I've always been at a fascination with King Arthur, watching Merlin on BBC and things like that. I've always loved the story of the knights in King Arthur. So seeing that sword on that sign, I was like, I need to straight away Google that when I get home. And that's when I started coming across so much information. This was back in 2021 or 2020. There's so much information about King Arthur and his knights and Sir Lancelot being so prominent here, with the story of Sir Lancelot, where he came over from France and he docked at the shores of Lancashire, hence Lancelotshire, that some people say.
Wow.
And he docked here, and the story is, the folklore is that the Lady of the Lake then took him below the depths of Martin Mere. So the Lady of the Lake is like she controls Martin Mere Lake, and she takes him in, and then when he's old enough, he sets forth to Camelot. And now Camelot, why is the theme park of Camelot? Why did they put that Camelot theme park just near Martin Mere? So that's what my question is.
So this is the theme park that's based in Charnock Richard, is it?
Yeah, so Charnock Richard was just at the edge of that other side of Martin Mere.
Right. I I used to play American football at that
All right.
that place. Just on the other side, there was a field that's just brought me back to many years ago.
Yeah.
And so this, so just coming back to that Martin Mere, because I used to have a friend who used to work at Martin Mere, and when I talked to him about this King Arthur legend, because that's the interesting thing is when you talk to people in the area about the King Arthur legend, everyone has some kind of folklore knowledge that yes, King Arthur, this was the lake for King Arthur, and this is the Lady of the Lake given the sword, the folklore, the story. And this friend of mine said that everybody working there at Martin Mere just knew, it was just a thing they knew, that at a certain point, this is where they believe the sword is, where they were joking to each other. Oh yeah, the sword is over there, kind of thing,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really went off to go and explore it, but I'm gonna have to go and just
take me
find
with
out where
you.
it is. Yeah. So it was when you brought that up in your video, I was like, wow, this is incredible, because in the Belliness line itself, where I'm going to be going to Worley, there is a stained glass window with King Arthur, and there's a lot of King Arthur along this Belliness line. And if we go back to the stuff of Lisa Renee, who she talks about the Albion light body, the activation of the Albion light body has got a lot to do with the King Arthur legend, and that maybe this is where I'm going to just jump to the conclusion that maybe they were guardians of the Stargate. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. The information's pointing towards that type of thing, because obviously, like, people are going to say, "Oh, King Arthur is everywhere. Why is it in Martin Mere? Everyone has their own unique version of King Arthur in their own place." But maybe they do. Maybe that's because Arthur was such a prevalent figure that's been wiped out of history that he made his mark on everywhere in Europe and even the world. He made his own mark. You even said that there was a story of him journeying to sack Rome. And then,
yes, there is a book called by Geoffrey Monmouth. I've got it here. I can't show it because of the background image I'm using. But the history of the kings of Britain, and then it was the 7th century, 600 something. He had a war party heading to sack Rome. I don't know if it was 6th century. Could have been the 4th century. Anyway, it was. I'll have to come back to it.
Probably would be the 6th, because I heard it was the 6th century that Arthur was there.
Yeah, I'll just. I think it might. I'm not sure if it was, because Rome was sacked a bit earlier than that, and it was No, that's right. Bellinus and Brutus sacked Rome before this, I think. Before that, King Arthur.
Yeah.
But he was heading to sack Rome again, because it's just something I'm going to have to really research into. It's like the highlights of the history is in this book, really, and so. But the fact is that he came back home because of family issues. There was an affair going on with his wife at the time, but that's what the book says. So he came home and he was killed along the way. So he didn't. I don't know if he made it back. I think he made it back to Britain, but was killed along the route getting home. So there is evidence to an Arthur and a Pendragon. Arthur Pendragon, his father as well.
But there's also documented evidence we put in the documentary. We've come across so much evidence of Arthur's 4 battles, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, by the side of the River Douglas. And there's 2 or 3 options of a Douglas, but the most likely is the Douglas near Martin Mere, because it makes sense. It's Douglas or Dulas, Douglas and Dulas. These are the battles that Arthur has had against, I think it may have been the Saxons, by the side of that River Douglas and Martin Mere. So it would make sense that if he got killed there, then the sword would have been thrown.
Actually, you've just reminded me of a documentary that a family member, someone else was watching. I walked past to get a coffee, and there was a documentary on the television from BBC number 4, I think it was. I think there's a channel called BBC 4. And as I was listening to the documentary, it was talking about a battle up in Cumbria that King Arthur had with the Saxons. So I was doing my research and doing my videos, and suddenly it was like that is a kind of a confirmation that the BBC sort of gave.
Yeah, normally the BBC say he's a fictitious character, like they normally get, the normal lies that they tell television.
Yeah, that's another rabbit hole to get into, because I used to work in television. And anyway, getting on to your journey itself, and where do you see the next van journey? Where are you going to head to next, do you think?
The plan is to save up some more money and obviously to make aligned money eventually, so it can keep me on the road with my projects, the books, and to make money from giving a true service, so I can do all these projects, free up my time to do the projects that matter. And the aim is to travel to see Mont Saint Michel in that area of France, and how it links to Merlin and King Arthur, and that other side on that Michael ley line. But then the plan is to find these places that do permaculture, that do replanting forests, that I can learn about these natural ways of living, that I can do my talks and show my documentaries. And I've got places lined up now, ready for the spring. Hopefully I'll be ready by then.
So you're going to be doing a European tour, the European journey.
Tour, yes.
And so France would be the first
That'll be the
location.
first stop, because I've always wanted to then see Mont Saint Michel after I went to St Michael's Mount. So that'll be a very fitting stop after the journey that I've just been on that Michael.
That's going to be amazing. I hope you document that, in terms of your journey and adventure, because you're going to be living on the road, and you won't be able to return back home for quite some time. That's amazing. And like, obviously, the van's gone through its first test where it went to Cornwall, and it just was running great. Is it still running okay? There's no problems with it?
It's got a few things it's going in for, and then it'll be ready to then just finish off a few bits inside, and then the van will be ready. It's just then waiting for me to be ready.
And so you, after France, once you get to France, have you thought about like where you want to travel after that, or is it just?
Well, at the moment, I've got opportunities in Portugal, so I'm going to maybe head that way at the moment as it stands.
And on another note, just want to go back to the Coggy Indians, because we were talking about that, and it's just something in my notes I wrote down. And where did you hear about the Coggy Indians again?
So that was Manic Organic again.
Manic Organic again.
Where I hear about everything.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Coggy Indians, the tribe in Colombia, they apparently one of the last remaining true ancient tribes in the world that are truly connected. They live simply just in the mountains, and like the ancient Colombians. This is what I find really interesting, is that the ancient Kogi tribe that went back many years, they had more people living there than they do now, okay, but they lived more in balance. So they say that it's nothing to do with the amount of people that are living there, it's to do with the knowledge that you have to live in balance with nature. So even though they had like hundreds of thousands of people living there, they still lived perfectly in balance with nature. So their message is to live in balance with nature, and that's it. That is all the message. Is very simple. It's not hard to live in balance with nature. It's just because we get in the way all the time and we want to conquer it.
It's the ego, that's my sort of input into that, and learning about my own ego. It's the egoic self, which is not something to, get too worried about. It's just, it's an illusion of ourselves that like get caught up in the material, and then I think that's the battle that we have here, is this. It's
just something that we need to incorporate in a healthy way. We can never get rid of the ego. It's just something that we have to use it in our say. We have to say, look, this is going to be our vision, and we have to stick to that, and then that can work for us, because without the ego, we wouldn't have the drive and the passion to want to.
Yeah, I mean, you could go into this idea that the egoic sort of self is really the survival self, and this three-dimensional aspect of life, and to survive in nature, you need the ego to survive. But it's when the ego takes over and takes control, that's the difference, and it becomes obsessed with, certain things that, of convenience is our biggest downfall. The more convenient we get, the less connected to nature. We don't do things for ourselves. We lose our own responsibility, and that's obviously another big topic. But back to the Coggy Indians, I also learned about the Coggy Indians, and there's two documentaries that I'm going to put below if anyone wants to learn about the Coggy Indians, because I also learned from Clay, from Manic Organic, and learned a lot about the fact that the Coggy Indians possibly were so there's a earthwork called Castlerig in Cumbria, and there's a documentary I'll also put down in the bottom in the video description on all the earthworks around the country. It's like a 3-hour documentary, and the character in there that's going on this journey to explore these earthworks goes to Castlerig, and he highlights that one of the stones has a Coggy Indian symbol, and the reason why he knows that it's a Coggy Indian symbol is because he went to Colombia and spent 6 months with the Coggy Indians, so he knew what kind of symbol it was, and he said this is very much like the communication that they do. So there's this like idea of, do you think that there was a connection? Maybe the Kogi Indians had a connection up there in some way. What is your perspective on that when you hear something like that?
Yeah, it matches with the communication with the sacred sites again. So are they sacred sites communicating, and then they've put these symbols on to kind of to say, look, this sacred site is communicating with that sacred site using, with this same symbol. So it's proven it's linked somehow. It's linked to Castle Rig and to the Kogi, and that's why I probably have gone to Castle Rig, because I felt this energy to be called to Castle Rig, because now I've obviously researching the Kogi too, and Castle Rig is not just, I couldn't find an alignment as such there on the equinox, but I found that the stones were mirroring the mountains behind them. And
what do you mean mirroring? In terms of how they're structured.
The actual ridge at the top of the stones were mirroring the formations of the mountains behind them, and we've put some pictures there in the documentary, and I've also done a video. If you scroll back way down through my YouTube videos, I did a Lake District adventure trip. It was like a 2-hour trip I did at Castle Rig, and when I was staying in hostels, I was just staying in hostels every day all week, and traveling throughout the whole of the Lake District, finishing off at Ennerdale at the other side. And I did documented that trip about last year, or the beginning of last year. It might have been, it was the beginning of last year, about in March time. I documented that trip, and that's where I found the information there at Castle Rig, mirroring the stones behind the mountains behind them.
Wow. I mean, you really are sort of, working on that idea of the gonzo vision, the gonzo journalism, going in there, experiencing it, and then capturing it. Yeah. So I admire that, and thank you for doing that, because I'm going to go back now and have a look at this and just see what more can I learn from your videos, because you've got so many out there and some I haven't seen yet. So have you got any plans for doing any videos now? After this one, after this, have you got any ventures coming up?
I'm just going to do a few kind of inspirational videos, putting together some footage I've got. But until I set off on Europe, I think I might ease off on the travel footage and just work on some small talks, getting across some points, and kind of ease off on it until I go back to Europe and then back on with the content.
Right, brilliant. I mean, I think if we get a chance and it's not too cold, maybe we could do something on Winter Hill.
Completely. Yeah, we're going to try and do a film there at Winter Hill, and go together and do it together and edit it together.
Just to show me what you found. I'd like to just know, and then I can explore and maybe incorporate in some of the videos I'm doing.
I did a video before that Lake District trip. I think maybe the year before. I did a video near Winter Hill, and I found all these structures buried, and it was a huge expanse of woodland with structures, stones, walls, standing stones, all in the woodland. And I did a video on that, and I was like, question, what is this? So maybe we could go there and start there.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I'm going to go back and watch some of these videos that you're talking about, because I haven't seen all of them yet. It's just that 4-hour long one that I keep watching now and again and keep coming back to, because there's some very significant aspects of the research you've done that confirms what I'm finding myself, and the King Arthur journey, going, being so close to what could have been the lake in the story is amazing. It's just on our doorstep, but also how it kind of brings us back to the land. When you start doing this, the journey of looking for the ley lines, looking for these earthworks, investigating the churches, it gets us out, it gets us into nature, it gets us on the journey, and having that relationship again with the trees and with the sky, and very similar to just how the Kogi Indian actually live. They have that relationship that's so balanced, where it's just the simple living, but then the consciousness is on like such a high level.
Because you said that they know a star without seeing it, didn't they? Would tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's one of the documentaries that I got from Clay is what I'm going to put in the bottom is of their journey, where they tried to reconnect an energy line that a mining company had disconnected around the coast of Colombia. And so by doing that, how they did it was to what they were doing was reconnecting this golden thread, like literally what would have been like, say, cotton thread or something, but it's actually made of gold. And to get to make that gold, they had to come over to England, and there was a manufacturers that were able to put the gold that they had, I think it was the gold they had from the ancients, and it would be turned into this thread that they could then walk the journey and put the thread back and reconnect this energy line. I thought just that alone is just mind-blowing. And so there's a point in the documentary where you're kind of like not sure if they, is this right? Is this, are they just living in an imagination here? But then when they get to see this astrologer who's used this Hubble telescope to take pictures of, galaxies that you can't see with the naked eye, and this little Kogi Indian in his, in his outfit that he still lives with, he's still got the same outfit.
He had to buy shoes, didn't he? He had to buy shoes. He
had to buy shoes. That was the only thing. That was amazing. And he went with like two other members of the family, and they all were trying to put shoes on for the first time in their life. That's another thing. But he just pointed to a picture, to a star in that picture, and said, "Oh yeah, this is the star that's this, that, and the other." And he gave details about the star, where the astrologist from Britain just turned and said, "You shouldn't be able to see that." Don't know how he knows that information, and that just kind of confirmed that, these guys are onto something, And it's a beautiful documentary. It actually, I get very emotional when I see it, because they're such little people, and they're going into these areas to lay down this thread, and these areas are like modern day cities and modern day villages, at least, and they go to this mining company, and they can't actually get to a specific part of the beach. They have to go around where the mining is. So yeah, the story itself is heart-wrenching in a way, but at the same time inspiring to the idea that there's a lot more to this world than the material sort of trappings that we are caught up in,
They understand it so deep, because they also say that we've been affecting, by building on these sacred sites, we are causing the earthquakes and the landslides, and we don't realize. They call us younger brother, and they say that we don't know what we're doing. We've lost our connection, and we're blaming it on everything else, global warming and all this stuff. But really, it's them. It's us.
It's our relationship to the earth.
Relationship with the earth that is doing it, and they proved to it. They said it was one of the I'm not sure which episode it was. It may be the same one, but they said they were protesting, and they were saying that you can't. I think it might be that mining place, and he said you can't do it here.
Yeah, they went back to a protest the year before, where all the tribes, all the Kogi tribes, because there's a few of them up there, all came together and tried to stop this mining from happening, because they were cutting into a river that was going to affect the flow of the energy. They were going to use this river, or they cut and they made like a river that went into the ocean. So this river is the source and the sustainability aspect to the mountains. And sure enough, a year later, they went back to it, and there was landslides, and they said, "Well, we told you."
Exactly. It was all over the news, wasn't it? Afterwards, the landslides. He said that we told you that there'd be landslides, so they knew. They had a deep connection to the land. They knew exactly what they needed to do. And some land was given back to the Kogi Indians, and within 20 years, the forest was fully grown back. The waters were running again. This is what happens when we return to our roots. We can heal the world within 20 years. 20 years.
Yes. I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's what the recognition that we're discovering is that when we connect with Earth, when we sort of put that attention to it, it speaks back to us. It replies to us in a way, in the way that it will heal, and it will heal our environment. But if we keep taking from it, because we need new cell phones, and we need minds, to get the products for these cell phones and these computers and these microchips.
It's all greed and money. The greed of money. It's not money that's the problem. It's the greed of the money and what it's doing with the power. The people they've lost their values. They don't care. And it's rubbing off, and then the rest of the people are working for them. It's like, well, we need to earn something, so they go and work for these corporations, and it's like a loop that just keeps going until like someone breaks it, and by saying, look, we can't do this anymore. We're destroying the earth. We're destroying ourselves. We're polluting it. And like they didn't even know. One of the scientists there, the Kogi, said to him, by harming the lake below, you are affecting the waters in the mountains above. And he said that's impossible. It's only above that affects below. He said, no, you don't understand. The water is then evaporating up and then going back into the mountains like a cycle. He says, you don't understand. He says, what would you do if you shoved a cork up your ass? It'll all be blocked, he said. That's what he said.
And in terms of what we can do now, listening to this, and one of the things you've inspired me for is to actually go and look for these springs, these original springs around the country. I'll put a link to the website where we can do this, because I think it's based in America, but you can get the one in the UK as well. And I think that's where we start. I think our local areas, speaking to our farmers, getting to know the plight that they're going through, how they, what they're up against in competition with supermarkets, trying to just grow food for us. At the end of the day, that connection to get food from the earth, we need to reconnect with it in some way, where it's not just something on a supermarket shelf in a plastic bag. I don't know how. I don't know the answers to this yet, but certainly the journey that you're going on and exploring these ancient waters and finding these springs and bringing the awareness to us, I think that's where we could start. If anyone was curious, what do we do? How do we go about trying to be a solution in this world and not the problem? What else could you add to that if someone asked you that?
I'd say stop buying any form. I mean, sometimes you can't if it's the only shop there, but if you can, stop buying products that are using these chemicals, e.g. glyphosate. Stop going to these fast food places. Stop going to any corporation. Stop going to the mainstream supermarkets. And because these corporations are that scared, they may look rich and billionaires. They won't be billionaires tomorrow if we stop using them, because they're that fragile. They can be bankrupt tomorrow if we stop. McDonald's can go bankrupt tomorrow if everyone stopped having it, or stop buying Coca-Cola. That's how fragile these are, and that's why they're so scared. That's why they keep fear-mongering all the time, because they're living in fear.
I think you just go to the label itself, look at what's on the label, and research what all of that is, because that on its own will just get you to put that back down. Because one of the things that I always make sure I do is have some organic food on my plate. That's the most important thing for me, and it's very hard to find that. And obviously we've talked about Manic Organic being that place where we can go, but for everybody to try and find the real food, to find out, like buying things that are to put in microwaves to eat, that might be just a one-off thing that you do because you're on the road or something like that. Doesn't mean you have to shut it out, but don't live by that, because it's very unhealthy.
It's all in moderation. If you don't listen to me when I said that. Not all in moderation. I mean, the odd time you have to do it, then you give yourself permission if there's nothing else. But don't listen to that term all in moderation, because it's weak. It's a weak mindset. No, it's every day try and live to the best of your ability. The one time that you may have to go otherwise, give yourself permission to do that if there's no other option. But don't listen to all in moderation crap, because it's a weak mindset.
Yeah, I think that is very much in the case with the having sugar. When someone says, "Oh, have a little bit of sugar if you want," no, sugar is not good for you. Simple as, Now, obviously, that doesn't mean natural sugars that come from fruits and honey and things like that. That's a different thing. But the processed sugars that we get in candy bars,
overly processed with numbers, artificial. This is what you need to go against. Anything that comes from the land. This is my opinion always as well. Is I eat meat, I eat fish, I eat veg. Anything that comes from the land, but I don't touch numbers. I don't touch artificial produce. I try not to touch non-organic food, but I've had to do it whilst I've been on the road at times, but I've tried my best to find the organic. I've been like, where is the organic shops? Where is the free-range organic eggs? And sometimes you can't access that.
Did you find many of those on the road when you were in Cornwall and Avebury and Cambridge? Were there any options that other, because obviously Manic is the place we go to, but were there anything like Manic around?
There was organic foods in Avebury. In Cornwall, it was a bit more difficult. I don't know if it's because they didn't have raw milk either, which I do have normally, which is unpasteurized, unhomogenized milk. So they didn't have as much of that, but they probably would have done, but I couldn't find as many as I wanted. All I could find sometimes is as much as I don't like going to supermarkets, Waitrose had the organic section. So I did stock up at Waitrose. But again, I would prefer to go to a smaller farm shop that's organic than to go to make my money at Waitrose.
because you go to these shops, even if like I'm outside the area, and like I was up in Pendle, and there was a farm shop up there that actually a lot of the foods they just leave on the side of the road. They're like a little stall on the side of the road, and you put a donation in. And there was a fella there sort of stocking up the eggs, and I was talking to him, and you know, just that interaction itself about where did those eggs come from? He said, "Oh, I just got them this morning. You know, I just picked them up," and I was like, "Great! So now I know that those eggs are fresh." You know.
Yeah.
You go into the supermarket, it's not the same story, but just that interaction where you go into a store and you're getting the food from the people that are producing it. That is, you know, a reconnection that I suggest is something where we could start to being more of the solution, looking for these springs and these wells, and maybe even, you know, sort of putting some pressure on the councils to start opening these wells up, because that's
what I figured out as well, especially in Totnes, is that all of the businesses were individual businesses. They changed the actual way of life, even in the towns. So if we put pressure, the humans come together. The councils have no choice but to listen to us. They work for us. The governments work for us.
Yes, I mean that's like, we can go even deeper into a really big podcast itself, a different subject matter. I mean, on that, in terms of how society is kind of developing with this sort of the internet of everything as well. You know, we can go into that, which is a completely different narrative, and a concern, you know, a bit of a concern with how everything is unfolding. But even if there is that concern, just to be able to go to the trees, just to be able to go to these farms, get back to nature, it makes such a difference. It doesn't really matter what's going on out there. If we've got that access to nature, the pure water, the healthy foods, the interconnection with nature itself, you know, sitting on a hilltop and getting the wisdom, you know, how many of us do that? Most of us are scrolling on our phones. How many of us go to a hilltop or go to the trees and actually connect with the energy of those trees? There's a science behind that, and I'm going to explore this in my own videos, and you're going to obviously, you know, do that as well with the waters. You're going to bring more information to us. I can feel it. I can feel the journey is really just begun, you know, and how exciting it is to be on this kind of journey. I wish I'd been on this journey at a much earlier part of my life, but at the same time,
it's meant to be. Remember,
it's meant to be. You know,
there's Chronos and Kairos time. What do you mean there? Chronos is the chronological time, which we use with our brain, and Kairos is when God wants you to do it. That's the divine time, and that's when you know it's meant to be. So that's the Kairos time. That happens when you just know it's the right time. Your brain might feeling to do it now, but it will only happen in Kairos time.
Kairos time, very good.
I think it's pronounced that anyway.
That's very close to Christos, because that's where you if you go into that exploration with Lisa Renee and Ashiana Dean, it's really connecting to the idea of the Christos energy grid, because that's what the King Arthur Grail lines are, you know, all about. I mean, it's a, you know, some of these presentations are about 4 hours long, so we couldn't fit it into the next 2 minutes as we finish up this first episode of you know, Adventures in Gonzo Vision, and I put it into AIGV just to make it easier. So the first AIGV podcast with James Caggianelli, isn't it?
Caggianelli, yes.
Because I noticed there's an A. It's Caggianelli. That's an Italian name, is that right?
It is, yeah. My dad's from Puglia, from Barry, which I've only just found out now that the Michael line does go through.
Wow! Oh my God, you've got to go there. You've got to go there now. And no, that's fantastic. I've been to Italy in a place called Vicenza, and it's a beautiful place. The architecture, the food, the flavor, the passion. If you go through Italy with your van, you're not going to want to leave, mate. I'm telling you now.
No, I'm not going to. I know I am not.
Brilliant. So as we're coming up to the last the 2 hours of this great conversation, do you have anything else that you would like to let the audience know? Anything inspiring to, you know, just another message?
I think I'd say just to watch the prophecy of Albion, really, and watch it to the end. When it goes to the eagle and condor prophecy, we wrap it up in terms of how it fits in with this time now, with the prophecies that have been written in by all of the ancients, and what we are actually going into. Because, like I always say, if you don't understand where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. And
Yes.
this is why it's so important to understand history, true history. And this is why they've manipulated it, because they don't want us to understand where we are and where we're going. But the only way truly is to get in touch with your heart, to get into nature, and to live your passions as well.
Yes.
You
I
know,
was just going to say that his story, you know,
his story.
his story. What about her story? You know,
I know, yeah. So
no, I love it.
we're balancing it all right now, and we're trying to actually live rather than just exist. You know,
Awesome.
we've got this one life in this physical body before we move on, and this is why it's so special, it's so sacred to live and to live our dreams, and to not just wait around, to put steps in every day. We have a vision. We've got a duty to our soul to achieve it. A duty. It doesn't matter about what anyone else thinks. We've got a duty to our own soul to achieve what we want.
To connect to our true self, you know, that's what it's all about. And you know, please everyone, just have a look at the videos that James has put out there. They're really good. And also look out for Churches and Trees, episode 3 coming out soon. Episode 2 is available, and it goes into exploring the churches and the symbols on the churches. And I will slowly break down what these symbols mean with references. So now this journey is actually going to go through King Arthur's Lake, and it's going to end up at Worley along the Ballyness line, and we're going to really explore that that area, Pendle Hill, and see where the energy line of the Ballyness line comes through this area, the caduceus of the Mary line and the Ellen line. This is all going to be in the videos to come, and you know, referencing all the books that have brought us to this moment. One more thing out there, make sure you get along to Manic Organic for your organic food, just to plug the only organic shop in Lancashire, you know, for everything you need organic and homemade. Wonderful. Great stuff, James.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you, everybody, for watching.